Hello everyone, welcome to the TriEssence martial art channel. Now in this video, I'm going to be discussing on the 4 core principles of internal style. We can also call it the 4 fundamental forces or mechanical forces of internal martial arts. Now when I'm talking about these 4 forces, I'm not referring to style-specific force, such as in Xingyi you have the Pi, Zuan, Beng, Pao, Heng. Right? Those are 5 powers that are unique to Xingyi. Or in Taiji you have the 8 forces, Peng, Lü, Ji, An, Cai, Lie, Zhou, Kao. So I'm not talking about these forces, I'm talking about the 4 foundational or mechanical force that can be observed in all internal styles. Right? Those other ones I mentioned previously, they are unique to certain style. But these 4 forces can be found in every single authentic internal style. Although in certain styles they do not particularly talk about them, they don't see them as individual force, but you bet that you can find these forces to exist and to function in the way it's intended to function in any given authentic, genuine internal style. So the first force I'm going to be talking about is the compression and expansion force. The base system, as an example, to understand this force is the Dai family Xingyi. Okay, if you know it or if you don't, you can Google it. One of the foundational training in Dai family Xingyi, they have a move where they stand upright, they spine curves, compression and expansion. Compression, expansion. Compression, expansion. Now I don't do Xingyi, so this is just an imitation of what it looks like, but it should give you an idea of what I mean by compression and expansion. If you look further into the walking trainings in Dai family Xingyi, you will observe something similar. They also start compressed and then expand. Compressed and expand. And then later on, if you observe the actual technique-wise, it's also very similar, right? So compress and expand. Compress and expand. So this is one of the most visible examples of compression and expansion. The reason they do that is because the spine is one of the biggest collection of joints on the human body. And you may or may not know, in order for us to generate power, we need to convert potential energy into kinetic energy. Okay? And on the human body, you need joints to move, to generate power, to convert potential energy to kinetic energy. And spine being one of the largest collection of joints, if you get able to utilize it in a compression and expansion way, you're able to generate a lot more power than from your limbs. So obviously I don't do Dai family style, so I'm not going to actually show you how that power looks like. But the general idea will be that, let's say I want to hit him, right? So instead of hitting him just with an arm or just with momentum leaning forward, I will compress myself so that, and as I expand, that force propels on forward. So that's a rough idea of the most textbook example of compression and expansion. Now, when we look at, for example, Xingyi, which derived from Xingyi, but you don't see this very obvious compression and expansion. The reason for that is because later on people realize when you curve in and hit people, the movement is too big. So skilled fighters can see that and they'll get out of the way before you're able to hit them. So as people move up the skill tree to meet more skilled fighters, there becomes a need to make the movement smaller. Now I'm not saying that Dai family style is inferior to Xingyi. There's a high chance that on the high level of Dai family styles, they also don't do this huge compression expansion. I'm not sure because I'm not into that style. But the reason why you don't observe it in Xingyi is because they pretty much made it smaller and internalized it. But if you really look closely, for example, a Pi Chuan, again, I don't do Xingyi, so this is also, again, just a crude imitation. You still observe that compression, and when the Pi Chuan comes out, that expansion, right? Except it's not huge anymore, it's a lot smaller. However, if it doesn't have that spine motion, then whatever you're doing with your legs and hips will never come up to your arms. right? So if you see a bad example of Xingyi, will be a guy doing that his arm is chopping or his arm is pushing, but it's not supported by the rest of his spine. And if the spine is missing, the hips and legs are missing too. Or if you see people, I've seen people do Piquan like this, like that. Again, if you do this, only your arms, from shoulder and forward are doing the work. The spine is not helping. And if you see someone does Xingyi like that, it's pretty certain that he does not have the compression expansion force. Now these four forces that we are going through can be observed as individual mechanics, individual forces, but in all these internal styles, they're actually used as a whole, right? There's no such thing as I only use expansion force here and I only use another force there. Eventually, all these four forces will combine together, which we'll get to in a bit. So first of all, this is compression expansion. The same force can be observed in Bagua. Okay, I actually know even less about Bagua, so I'm not going to really go into it. But I would say that, the fact that when you're holding this pose, if a guy is sticking his chest out, he will never have this force, right? Which is why in all the internal styles, it's required to have your chest hollowed out, your back bulge, expand, head up, tailbone down, so the whole spine stretches inversely. And only then will you be able to attain this spinal force. And then we can look at each one. Each one, again, the spinal force, this compression expansion force is not obvious. But if you look closely, in an example like Fuan Shi Li, this is the compression, and this is expansion. Compression, expansion. They don't even talk about this in Yiquan, right? In Yiquan, they more talk about Hun Yuan Li, the 6 directional force and all of that. They don't talk about compression expansion. But it is still in there, right? This is basically that. You compress your body when you go forward, and you expand your body when it comes back. Another example you can see in Chen style. Again, Chen style is actually one of those that is more obvious than Xingyi and Yiquan, but it's less obvious than Xingyi Liuhe. A good example would be if you look from here. Right, this movement. Normally if you see people doing it, they'll just do this and move their arms. And this is what we call, an aerobic Tai Chi. It's just a movement exercise. There is no internal connection. Instead, when you are here, you're supposed to think about your hands being locked up. You need to open them up. And one way to open them, if you look on the side, is to tuck in the tailbone, compress the spine, and then using the spine's expansion to open up this arm. So it's almost like, if you hold my hands together, you can't just use your arms here. Instead, you see the tailbone tucks in, and that comes up there. Right? This is the compression and the expansion. Now after that, again, from here, when this arm is going forward, actually from this side, this arm goes forward, the spine actually compresses backwards. That again is an example of how compression, expansion, right? This mechanical motion helps to propel the arm forward. So that brings to a quite interesting point. In Xingyi Liuhe, also original compression expansion, you compress when you gather force, you expand when you generate force. But in Tai Chi, it goes both ways. So there are times where you compress and you release when you expand. But there are also times where you release when you back compresses, like over here, right? You actually generate power when your back leans back. Or like in brushing knee. You don't do this and then expand and generate power. It actually, as the force curves back, it comes through the arm onto the person. The classical term that you find in the Tai Chi class is called qi tie bei, meaning the qi sticks to the back. Right? That refers to the inverse bow. It can also be called the inverse bow. It's when you generate power this way rather than curving and generating power that way. And lastly, we'll look at Tongbei. Now, Tongbei is one of Wuxing Tongbei in particular, the internal version of Tongbei. One of the styles where people don't often associate Tongbei with compression expansion because all you really think about is the arm swinging. Right? That's normally what people think about when they think Tongbei. But the authentic lineage of Tongbei actually has a very huge emphasis on the compression and expansion. One of the examples we can talk about is double 摔掌, right? 摔掌 is like this. This is one version where you do two, like that. So this is often used as an opener to drop the person's guard. Now, obviously other forces are involved too. So let's say his arm is here. Just for this demonstration set, I'm going to hit him here. Because normally you hold your arm here, but hitting here is a lot more sore for him. So I'm just going to, for demonstration purpose, do it here. Now, so you tense up. If I just use the regular force without compression and expansion, I can still drag the force down. But it is a lot less than if I compress first and release when I drop the hand, which will look something like that. So ideally, in an applicational purpose, I will compress the body, expand, and then come in with a lunge. So in all this motion where it goes down, the body compresses and expands. So that will be a rough idea of how compression expansion exists in all these internal styles. The next force we're going to look at is rotational force. Now, when I mention rotation, often people will think, that's actually simple, right? Everyone can do it. In boxing, you punch, you rotate. In karate, you also rotate. Everyone knows how to rotate. That is true. But in internal martial arts, rotation / spiral is a more complicated mechanic. It doesn't only limit to twisting your body when you're punching, right? There's more to it than just that. One of the most famous styles for rotational or spiral force is actually bagua. It is a common misunderstanding that bagua walk in circle in order to go behind someone. Okay, and if you think logically about it, unless you're in the speed of flash, you are not going to be able to go behind a person in the time that he throws one punch. And while you're trying to go behind him after one punch, he will throw it to the second punch. And then you have to deal with that punch. So you can't go behind a guy. Then why do bagua focus so much on walking in circles? I don't do bagua, so I can't tell you the exact answer, but I've met a lot of bagua practitioners. And the one answer that makes the most sense is that you walk in a circle to train spiral force. Okay, if you look at how bagua step, the one leg goes out, go bai bu, and the next one is called kou bu. Right? So you're constantly twisting this leg, and then you're twisting that leg. As a result, your lower body are constantly rotating, they are constantly twisting. And if you look at the upper body, your body don't face over here, right? It faces the center of the circle. And if I step another step, the body don't face there, it's still facing that center of the circle. Your body is constantly twisting too. And if you look at the arm, it's not obvious, but the elbow is never like this. The elbow is downwards. In other words, there's also a twist on the elbow. So basically, the legs, the hips, the spine, and the arm are constantly twisting. And I believe, as the way my friend explained it to me, through constantly walking like this, you develop a skeletal habit of rotating everything. Everything kind of gets twisted into one. Right? It's almost like you take a piece of cloth and you rotate it really tight. That's pretty much what happens when you're walking in bagua. You can also observe this in the most fundamental bagua technique, right? A single palm change, where the one hand rotates inwards and then rotates outwards. The hand rotates inwards and then rotates outwards. See, everything it does is about rotation. But sadly, I don't do bagua, so I can't actually show you how the force works in bagua. This is just an idea of why bagua is known for rotational force. Another good example would be chain-style Tai Chi. Right? A lot of people know that chain-style Tai Chi is famous for a type of force called the soak reeling force, 缠丝力. And now there's like 100 different explanations on what 缠丝力 is. My personal understanding to 缠丝力is basically a rotational force. And this rotational force, unlike just throwing a punch where everything rotates in one way, is slightly more complex. Let's take a look at the starting position, right? Chain-style Tai Chi is the first move. Here and there, right? It's the first thing. Now, I've seen a lot of people who just take out their arm and then just go this way and then they go that way. And they think that I'm not even going to talk about whether you can catch an arm, because obviously I don't think you can catch a boxer's jab like this. But we need to take this to look at the force in itself, not how viable the application is. Now when I catch an arm, if I just catch an arm like this and I pull this way, if he's strong, I will not be able to pull him. And of course you will say that when somebody is punching, he's not actually pulling back, which is true. But again, this isn't looking at the viability of the application, but looking at how force works. So let's say he's not punching, but he's having his arm there, and I'm trying to pull his arm in a struggle. If I just rotate my body this way, it's very hard to overcome his force. But how can I accelerate or increase the amount of force I have, right? First of all, this arm, instead of just going this way, I'm rotating it inwards like this, right? This arm also, instead of just going this way, I'm also rotating it. At the same time, this leg is rotating that way. This leg is rotating the other way. So my hip is spread out and put in two directions. And my other body is also rotating in its own axis. The moment I'm doing that, instead of moving this way, it's like this. You see every joint is coming into it like that. It's almost like every joint or every piece of bone is like a gear. So this gear rotates that way, that gear rotates that way, and each gear interlock to create a force that comes up here and pulls the person back. So that, I believe, is what chainsaw really means by the soak reading force. It's a force that spiral across the body in any given motion. Right? The same with single warp, the one that we talked about just now under compression. This is an example where you can see the forces coexist. Now, one of the common mistakes that I see with people doing Tai Chi with this single warp or cloud hand is that they rotate the hand too quickly. So the hand comes here, and then it comes here, or the single warp, the hand comes here, and then it goes there. The moment your hand completes the rotation, there's no more power. So the correct way of doing it is to constantly generate that rotation. I don't rotate like this and then push forward. The rotation comes at the end, or it lasts through the whole process. And that is another example of rotational force. Let's say this force would require compression force to propel the arm forward. And this type of rotation force is found across the entire chainsaw form. Everything you do is about how this arm rotates this way or that way, the leg rotates this way or that way, which is why one of the basic foundational training for chainsaw is you standing like this and you do this. Right? The soak reading exercise. It's not to do a motion like other people do. It's actually to find the connection. When my elbow is pulling in, how is my body rotating with it or against it, right? In this case, the elbow pulls this way, the body rotates that way, and then propels the other way, etc. So this is how you can observe rotational force in chainsaw. Now, if you look at Xing Yi, it goes without saying, right? When the Zuanquan comes out, it rotates. Nobody do Zuanquan like a non-rotational uppercut. It actually starts here, and then it goes out like that. Right? It goes out like that. And more importantly, Qiquan, it faces top, goes out, and then it rotates downwards. And the body also doesn't face the dead center. Do this, the body rotates as well. Of course, the legs too. So although in Xing Yi, it's less obvious than in chainsaw, because it's in a more narrow frontal guard stance. But the rotation is still there, and it's more subtle and therefore harder to actually grasp. Now, in Yiquan, you might say, okay, Yiquan stands in this stance, so there is no rotation. And that is incorrect. Yiquan, the body rotates less because they want Hunyuan Li, right, the 6 directional force. But if you look closely, the arm is always rotating. Right? When you start here, the arm rotates this way and rotates back. Or the circular rotation. Or this way. Or even this, right? This looks like it's just front and back, but there's still a rotation there. It's just very subtle. And then back. Back you rotate this way. Rotate inward, rotate outward. So rotation is everywhere. And lastly, we look at Wu Xing Tong Bei again, right? Wu Xing Tong Bei, again, rotation is very important. But besides what we've been through on the arms, it also comes from the body. Let's look at circular hand, one of the basic techniques in 五行通背. Circular hand, if so for those that doesn't know, is coming up here, straight in the guy's face, and when the block is there, you want to spin him out so you can open him up for other attacks. Now if I do this purely with the arm, it is not very effective because it's my arm versus his arm. So in this case, I need a rotation of the body to accelerate. So over here, I'm using relaxed thinking force, right? It's the force we're going to get to. But what moment his frame has been moved, that's where the rotation force comes in, the acceleration, in order to move his arm out so I can attack with the other hand. So this will be an example of how rotational force exists in 五行通背. It does, of course, go a lot deeper, so this is just a rough guide on how rotational force works. Next, we're going to look at opening and closing. This is one of the more vague forces that is harder to grasp. Opening and closing is a very common term in internal martial art. You see a lot of people throw this term around, but very few actually understand what is opening and what is closing. Okay, a good example would be Sun style Tai Chi. Sun Lutang's Tai Chi is famous for opening and closing. If you look at the manuscript, the classic text, it specifically mentions that Sun style Tai Chi emphasizes on opening and closing. However, a lot of modern people interpret that opening and closing as a movement, right? Because Sun style has movement that opens up and closes. So they believe that is opening and closing, it's a movement. If that were true, then Sun style would be nothing impressive because anybody can movement open and closing. Instead, the correct understanding to opening and closing is joint. You open and you close joint. And there are a variety of reasons and purposes to why you want to open and close your joints. There are 3 joints that are the most important to be able to open and close. Firstly is the shoulder. Secondly, the waist. And lastly, the hips. Shoulder is one of the weakest joints on the body. Greatly hinders how much force your body can transfer to the hand, as well as how much force your hand can receive into the body. So if your shoulder is weak, then force gets stuck here, right? Which is why in all the martial arts, you will find people say that you don't want to stuff your shoulder, you don't want to pick it up, you want to do this because when you do that, you have less power, which is true. However, even if you relax your shoulder, you sink your shoulder, shoulder is still a weak joint. The internal style goes further by extending the shoulder. So an example of this, again, we use chain style, right? We use like la zha yi, this motion. So let's imagine in this position, and he's pushing on my hand and on my elbow. If my shoulder is conventional, obviously if I'm like this, yeah, you can't do nothing. Even if I'm like this, I'm trying to push it. This is still a weak point. And no matter how much force I'm trying to generate from my leg and my body, most of the force will be stuck here. This is the point where everything gets pushed into. And if your shoulder is not that strong, you're going to have a problem. The correct of doing this is by extending this. Okay, so normally your shoulder is like this. When you extend, notice how my arm looks like it went longer, but it's actually not the arm, it's the shoulder. And once that happens, then I'm no longer struggling on the shoulder joint, I'm struggling on my spine. So all the force I'm using on my spine can then be propelled onto the person. Whereas if I'm like this, then most of it is stuck in my own shoulder. This same principle can be seen in Xingyi as well. Although Xingyi doesn't talk about it exclusively and you don't see the obviousness of the shoulder extending, but when they actually do Santi stance, right? If you see someone doing Santi stance like this, chances are they are probably bad. Because, especially, those Sun style people out there that look at Sun Lutang's picture and have a stance like this. If you start off standing like this, your shoulder will never be open, which means you never overcome the obstacle that prevents your force from going out or back. The reason that you see Sun Lutang's picture, his arm is not very far away, is because he's already done that when he was younger. Okay, the thing about Chinese martial art, or internal martial art in particular, is the higher you go, the more confined you are, the smaller movement you do. But it has to be built upon the basis of everything being stretched and opened out. which is why you can't learn from the end result. You have to look at the beginning. So if you look at a good CMA practitioner, you will see that when doing P-chuan, it's not just here. It's not pivoting on the shoulder. It's pivoting on the back. Right? Same with 崩拳 or 钻拳. Everything happens with the back pushing into it. It's not this, right? If somebody doing 钻拳 like this, rotating purely on the shoulder, they have very shallow force, and that is incorrect. Again, 八卦, similar to how 形意 works, when you're holding your arm, it's also not like this, but it's extended outwards. But again, I don't do 八卦, so I'm not going to go too much into it. 一拳 as well, right? In fact, 一拳, at least the Yao style, will actually talk about it. Except that they don't talk much about shoulder. They just say that when you're doing stances, you can't hold this in. It has to be expanded out, right? So this piece of muscle here, if you feel a good 一拳 practitioner, normally when you hold up your arm, this piece of muscle is here. But when he expands, it almost feels like it goes in, like a hole here, it goes away. And feel the back actually pulls out. That is the 2 directional force, right? We talk about the 6 directional force. Head, tailbone, back of the spine, front of the hand, and then the 2 elbow, which pulls the shoulder open. So when they're actually doing stuff, it's also stretched out. They don't actually, it's not like this. This is an exaggerated version, but that's how normal people would do these 一拳 motions, but actually they have to actually stretch everything out. It's just that if you don't know what you're looking for, it's very hard to observe that. And lastly, again, I'm going to look at 五行通背, which is perhaps the most famous style when it comes to opening the shoulder, or shall I say, 五行通背 open shoulder the furthest than other styles. And it's for a good reason. 五行通背 largely focuses on downwards force. And if you look at the anatomy of a person, if your shoulder is where it is, when I do a downwards force, a lot of it was held on this joint. Right? When I'm doing this, perhaps the forearm would land on the other person, but these parts are getting pulled back to the shoulder. Which is why, if he just holds his arm here, if I just put my arm here like this, he's only holding my forearm's weight. He's not actually, the rest of the weight is holding my own body. But the moment I extend my shoulder, then he's actually holding majority of the weight of my arm. And I'm not holding anything here. So if I do have a downwards P or shrike, I don't want to do it like this, because then the force is stuck on myself. Instead, I want to do that. So this will be how 五行通背 make use of opening the shoulder. And of course, this is only the opening. Now, why is it called opening and closing? Because closing is just as important as opening. If you think about, we generate power from the displacement of joint. And normally, let's say Wing Chun, a good portion of Wing Chun people, they punch with the elbow. I mean, they do talk about using the knees, the hips, everything, the 7-point contact. But the first primary generation of power comes from the elbow. Why? Because the elbow is a joint that has a lot of rotation. You can move it quite a bit. It's easier to generate power. Now, in internal styles, we actually want to generate power by the displacement of the shoulder blade. Not saying we don't use the elbow at all, but we're not limited to the elbow. So in other words, I could have a person here, and instead of bending the elbow to push him, or rotating the body to push him, I can just hold the shoulder blade in and extend that to hit. Obviously, this isn't the best of force, and you don't use this force by itself, but it is used together with other forces. Right? When I do a punch, it will be the rotation of the spine, it will be the compression of the spine, and then it will also be the extension of the shoulder blades. And as for closing, anything that stretches open will have to close. We're back to the circular hand example. When I'm hitting him this way, it is opening up the shoulder. Right? I open up my shoulder and I create enough weight to move him. When it comes to the next part, this is the part basically where I fling my shoulder open and it closes in. Okay, so instead of normal people doing circular hand, which is just rotating on the shoulder rotation, the correct way of doing it is like that. You see, it opens, and it closes here. So same thing with the previous example. If I were to want to break his skull with double strike downwards, or double pow, if I don't use my shoulders, if I don't open my shoulder, it will just be here. And if I use my body, it will still just be that. But the moment I release them, the force is a lot bigger. And that coming downwards force is basically the joints closing in. So I open them, and I close them in. And from here I'm closed, it opens up again. So you hit people when you close, and hit people when you open. Now that's the shoulder joint. The waist does the same thing. I'm not going to go into detail here, but basically if you think about it, if your waist has a natural curve, which is like this, then any force that comes to your body would break by the waist. If I hold my arms just as an experiment, hold my wrist. If my waist is sticking out like we normally do, then the force that he pushes in is going to be pushed out from my back. Because of the way my waist is, I can't use the leg. I can try to use the leg, but it's not efficient. When you change the structure of your waist, essentially what happens is I'm closing in that natural curve. So that whatever force he hits goes directly to my hind feet, on my hind foot, right? It's not like this, but like that. Now you might notice that this actually coincides with compression and expansion, which is why I say these four forces, although they are separate, they actually work together. They actually, in a given technique, they all exist. So the waist have to bulge back in order to be able to connect the upper body to the lower body. And lastly, the hips, right? The hips need to open and close as well. Now, it is quite a common understanding that when you punch, you use your hip, right? You will even see it in karate, for example, right? They will also know how to punch with the hip. But if you look closely, not saying what they do is wrong, what they do is correct in their own style and in an external style perspective. But internal style does not use hip the same way they do. And the reason is because if you look at the way they use the hips, they first rotate the hips, and then they punch when the hip comes back. Normally the hip moves first to help with the acceleration, right? So if they punch, it will be like that. The hip kind of goes out, and as the hip comes back, the punch goes out. Another example of using hip would be these, people who think they're doing chainsaw Tai Chi in particular is one of the more popular cases, but other cases too, where they think they know, they think you got to shake to generate power. But because the hips, it's not open, it's one piece, and it's connected to the spine, it's all in one core, they rotate the whole thing. Right? So they will hit like this, or a good example would be this movement in chainsaw Tai Chi after 倒卷红. Right? So you see them shaking this like belly dancing. The problem with that is if you hold hip and spine is one piece, then in shaking it, you are breaking the connection to the rest of your body. So although you are shaking this, it is not coming up to the body. The force is disconnected. The correct way of using the hip joint is to first open the two bones up so that there is a slight space in between. Now this is very hard to observe on camera. But in reality, the joint will slightly open up. And once that is done, the spine sits in the middle and is not actually affected. So I can actually shake this hip or that hip without having to rotate the whole thing. And back to the starting whole example, when I come here, instead of doing this, it's just there. You see, a very slight motion on the hip gets transferred onto the hand. And same with a punch, right? Instead of using the whole body rotation with a punch, it will just be the hip rotated, but the spine almost remains in the middle without shaking. To do that, you require the two hips to be separated. We'll get into that in a separate video, but that is basically what it means to open your hip. The hip, waist, shoulder are the three most important joints. Now later on, in the more advanced training, one would say that you want to open every single joint on your body, even each finger joint. Now whether that actually happens or not, I cannot say, because I can't open the person and see if the joint really opens. But what I can say is, when you're actually practicing, it sure feels that way. And all these joints can sort of open slightly, and then they close slightly when you compress the force, and opens again when you expand the force. But again, we'll get into that on a later video. Now, the last force that we're going to talk about is the relaxed sinking force. Now, the first three are mostly mechanical, meaning it's actually a motion, compressing, release, rotational, spiral, opening, closing. These are mechanical observations. The last force is more like a quality. Okay, so relaxed and sinking exists throughout any internal style. It's not a motion you do, it's not a mechanic you use, it's a quality. And the best way to understand this quality, you think about a baby. If you ever carried a baby, if you haven't, if you try it out, when the baby is awake, he or she will feel lighter than when he or she is asleep, right? Or it's more like what we call dead weight. So when a person is asleep, they feel much heavier than when they are awake. However, we all know their body mass does not change. The weight is the same, so that when they're sleeping, they're actually heavier. But it feels heavier. The reason for that is because it's a quality of the human body, aka dead weight, but in Chinese martial art we call it relaxed sinking force. It's basically try to not let our own muscles hold in the force, right? When you tense up, even though you think you are stronger, you're making your limbs harder, you think you're hitting harder, what actually happens is you are holding your own weight back. Of course, if you're doing external martial art, you're developing a lot of muscle mass, you can't do that, nothing wrong with it, okay? But in this video, we are talking about what internal martial art is after. So if you're doing internal martial art, then that understanding is incorrect. Internal martial arts is all about making use of gravity. Okay, that might sound like some hippie new age hippie stuff, but what it actually means is quite simple. We have body weight, and there's gravity. Internal martial art is all about how efficient we can use our body weight and accelerate it with gravity to get the job done. And to do that, we want to hold as little force in our muscles as possible. Which is why, often you hear people say, you do more internal martial art, you got to relax, you can't be tense. And a lot of times people misunderstand what relax means. So instead, they will just relax and be floppy, right? When you see people doing push hands, they do this. They don't use any force at all. That's incorrect, right? If you do that, you can do it for your whole life, never be amount to anything. What internal martial art actually means is that you relax all the unnecessary muscles. You're still holding your frame, you're not yielding, not giving in, but you try to support and withstand any force, indirect force, through the skeletal structure. So that even though you are not yielding, you are not holding your own weight back either. So that the other person will receive the maximum weight. Now, if you meet someone that is a genuine practitioner, you will notice that their hand, when they hit you, or when you cross hand or do some exercise, the hand feels heavier. And that heaviness is not coming from muscular strength, but rather come from relaxed sinking force. Now the best example for this would again be Tongbei, right? Again, this is observed in every other internal style as well, but Tongbei is just more visible when it comes to relaxed sinking force. If you haven't seen my previous Wuxing Tongbei videos, I would suggest you check those out. They go quite in depth on this. But just as an example again, now I'm going to hit him over here because you don't get hurt from this muscle. So I'm going to ask him to tense up. If I was to tense up, okay, he is going to be sore on the surface, and he does get the impact. But as you can see, although I'm hitting him hard, I'm actually holding a lot of the weight back in my own body. So I'm using a lot of muscular force, but I'm not actually, he's not feeling my weight. Okay. Instead, if I relax this part, okay, so this really, see, then he get dragged a lot more because by relaxing, I'm actually releasing more weight. Okay, again, this might not be as obvious when you see on camera, but when you actually feel it, it's a huge difference. And ultimately, instead of just dropping the weight, I would accelerate the weight, the dead weight, but still not tense up, and it will look something like this. See how far he goes, and I can hit him back, and how little I actually move instead of doing that or doing this. That's the dead weight. And of course, the same can be applied to other things such as, hu pu in yi quan, or pi quan in xing yi, or, brushing knee in tai chi. But you'll never be able to notice the difference on camera whether I'm using relaxing force or not. But on the receiving end, the person will either feel just hard and strength, or he will feel it's just heavy, rather than stiffness and strength. So that is the loss of the 4 most important forces found in internal style. Now, the reason for this video is not for you to learn and be able to apply these 4 forces just by watching my video. That is unfortunately impossible. I wish it was possible, but it's not. However, what I would like to achieve with this video is to educate people so that you can understand what to expect when you are learning internal style. Right? If you go to your local dojo and you want to learn any of the internal styles, and your master is not teaching you this, or at least a variation of this. He might not use the exact same word like compression, expansion, rotation, spiral. He might not use the exact terminology. But if he's not teaching you internal style based on these 4 forces, then my suggestion is get the hell out, get your money back, save your time, save your money. It's better to not do something than doing it wrong. Because at least you can spend that time doing something else. Whether you're sitting on the sofa watching TV, playing games, whatever, you can enjoy life. You don't want to waste your time doing something that's incorrect. Which is the main purpose of me making this video. Is to indicate that how you can differentiate between a genuine internal martial art instructor and a fake one. And sometimes, they're not on purposely lying, but their teacher taught him that way. He believes that's correct. But even though he's not at fault, he's still wasting your time. Lastly, we're going to just look at how these 4 forces combine together. So we're going to look at an example from Wu Xing Tong Bei, the mid punch. I'm actually still relatively new to this mid punch. I'm not doing it very well, but I still might want to use this as an example. So normally, if you look at conventional external Tong Bei, when you do a mid punch, they often mostly use the arm. So it will be like that. They will lean their body forward and they will propel the arm with their elbow. Like this. Again, nothing wrong with this if you are doing external style. But if it's internal, then this is wrong. It does not abide to the 4 forces. Now let's take a look at the 4 forces one by one. So in my version of Wu Xing Tong Bei, we do the punch like this. And first of all, my body is upright. When I do the punch, it compresses. Right? So this is the reverse compression expansion, the opposite of how Dai family do it. The reason for that is because Wu Xing Tong Bei, my lineage, came from Tai Chi. The founder, Zhang Ce, spent 10 years in the Yang family. And Yang family is famous for the reversed compression, or the reverse bow. Which is why in our lineage, we also make use of reverse bow. And that's the first force, is compression. If I don't compress the spine, notice how it's only the arm that's punching. The body cannot help. But the moment I compress the spine, it's how the body accelerates the arm. Secondly, let's look at rotational force. If I don't rotate at all, even if I compress, the force is very weak. And it's very singular, right? There's not enough support. But the wrong rotation will be like this, because then you break your structure. Instead, the spine does a very minor pull over there, and it comes back. That's how rotation works. Next, we'll look at opening and closing. If I don't open and close my shoulder joint, you can only use the arm. If I do compress my body, the force still does not come out fully onto the punch, which is why you're required to open this joint here. See, that's how the whole body rams into that punch. And the hips as well. If I don't use the hips, then half the body is not working together. If I spin the hip around, then your structure is broken. Correct while doing it, it's like that. And lastly, relaxing thinking force, you can't observe it through camera. But a derivative of relaxing thinking force, which is the rebound force, is also present. In other words, when I'm stepping down, I'm actually wanting another force to bounce back up into my hand. So I'm not just stepping and punching here, I'm actually borrowing another force from the ground. I drop my weight, and that force comes back up. So in a single punch, you can see all these forces have to be in place for it to be complete. But if you just learn this move and try to do all 4 forces at the same time, you're probably going to struggle quite a bit. Which is why in most systems, you learn these forces individually, you learn to identify them, train your habit to teach your body how to use each force, and then combine them together to make it into what we know as skeletal force, bone force, or structural force, right? These are all referring to the same thing. So when people talk about structure, bone force, skeletal force, is actually a collection of these 4 mechanics. So this will conclude today's video. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope that it was informative. I will be making more in-depth video on each of the 4 foundational forces. And those videos will be uploaded onto my Patreon account. So if you're a Patreon supporter, you'll be able to access these videos. Thanks for your support. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.